All right, we're back for another episode of Inside Hilltopper Sports, our Zoom chat weekly, right here on InsideHilltopperSports.com. We are joined today by Noah McGhee and Casey Warner. Tyler is out doing some scheduling for next semester, so making sure he graduates. He's on that. I think he's on that 4-year plan. Maybe he's on a 5-year plan. I can't remember. So, uh,
Might
uh,
be
yeah, maybe depends on how many times you want to switch your majors. So, uh, but obviously, a lot to talk about. Not necessarily good news for Western Kentucky as they lost 38-14 to Marshall this past weekend at home. Homecoming was not kind to the Hilltoppers. So we'll get into that here in just a minute. But first off, we always got to start out with the overall Conference USA recap. And to do that, the esteemed Noah McGhee. Noah, take it away. What all happened in Conference USA this past weekend?
Well, first of all, the biggest shock, BYU's ran into a lot of CUSA opponents and has some scheduled in the future, and obviously they just happened to meet up with the team that I've owed severe apology. I've had to be based on an apologist in terms of how I've attacked them. UTSA was 5-touchdown underdogs last Saturday against the Cougs, and they lost by 7. Now they scored late to make it a 7-point game instead of 14 points, but UTSA fell short. They played their fourth quarterback that's seen significant snaps this year. So I think UTSA is a really solid team outside of just finding consistency at quarterback. Sincere McCormick, the running back, is actually the leading rusher in the nation. I was just scrolled through some stats the other day, and that's something that kind of struck me. Just was I had no idea. Then MTSU also proved me wrong this weekend. They picked up the first win against Florida International, but it also didn't help that Florida International is having a lot of problems. Replacing James Morgan from last year. They're having a lot of good teams in Conference USA are having problems with quarterback consistency, and Asher O'Hara, is the guy for MTSU, so he carried the load for them to pick up a 3-point win. Louisiana Tech kind of have an odd game too this weekend. They look they should have blown out UTEP, but Luke Anthony and them they just kind of barely pulled out against the Miners, and then Charlotte, North Texas, obviously Charlotte. Chris Reynolds is having a really good year under center for them, and North Texas is a really high-flying offense. They move the ball well, but they really struggle on special teams. So I think they missed 3 field goals this week, and last week they missed a couple field goals and muffed a punt or something. So North Texas they were right there on the verge of having a couple more wins on their schedule, but they got cleaned up on special teams. And then obviously the Hilltoppers and Thundering Herd went down this weekend as well. So talk about that, I assume.
Oh, no, we're just totally not going to talk about that at all.
It wouldn't be a bad thing if we didn't, honestly.
But yeah, you do owe UTSA an apology, and you also owe. Don't forget about Middle. I mean, you owe them an apology. I think you said.
I did say Middle was going to go winless, so I mean that's fair. I mean if they're 1-9, then I won't feel as bad still. But I guess I'm still an IOU to MTSU. My bad.
Right. All right, good stuff, Noah. And like I said, we will transition to the game this past weekend. Western Kentucky, obviously, like previously mentioned, let's call it like it is. They got boat raced. 38-14 Marshall. Those 2 scores for Western Kentucky came late in the fourth quarter in a little bit of garbage time. So let's start there, Casey. Just overall thoughts on the game. Positive, probably a lot of negatives. Tell me if there's any positives coming out of this game for you. But you start wherever you want to with the positives and negatives.
Yeah, sure. I was at the game Saturday. It was a pretty decent environment for homecoming. A lot of students there, I noticed. It was a pretty good atmosphere for the, available capacity they've set at Houchin Smith Stadium. So I was pretty impressed with the atmosphere. Felt like it was going to be a good start to the night. And like Noah mentioned when we were talking before we started, the big run to start the game by Marshall, that was a heartbreaker. I was like, well, this game's probably not going to go very well. And it did not go very well from there. But came away with some positives, looking over the stat sheet in the box score, no penalties for WKU. So a surprisingly clean game, even though, they didn't do much, no penalties. 1 of 1 red zone efficiency. They only made it 1 time, but pretty efficient, coming away with some positives there. Xavier Lane, he had 4 catches for 74 yards with an 18.5-yard catch average. That's always good to see from one of your go-to guys at receiver. And then Kavaris Thomas, who we're going to get into a little bit later, 148 yards passing, a touchdown, 30 yards on the ground, and a touchdown on the ground. So that's some pros I took away. You know, if you can come away with anything, those are the positives. And then the negatives are really bad negatives. 2 of 12 on third downs. Like, I really don't see any comfort in this offensive scheme at this point. I mean, you can easily see it every third down. I mean, I think it was 2 or 3 third downs we just threw screens. And, I mean, they were like 3rd and 10s, at least 3rd and 9s. I mean, it's just like it's really painful to see that short game and that conservative play calling on third downs. And it shows with that 2 of 12 efficiency right there. 294 total yards. That goes along right with it. No comfort on the offense right now. Piggy T didn't get it done the other night. He didn't look good, 60 yards. That's it through the air. And then 85 rushing yards. I mean, this ground game is non-existent. It is non-existent. There are no holes being opened up. Where's Gage Walker? I mean, I have no idea where Gage Walker is this year. I don't know what happened in the offseason. I know that offensive coordinator Brian Ellis said that he was going to get some other guys carries this year and kind of take the load off of Gage Walker. But, I mean, I didn't think he'd be taken out of the game completely because it's a week-to-week basis now. Gage Walker does nothing. So, I mean, I feel for the guy. He had an 1,000-yard year last year, but just not getting it done this year. And that has to do with the line, too. And then 3 fumbles lost, 2 by Piggy T. So, just not taking care of the ball, not efficient in any way, shape, or form on the offensive side of the ball. And this offense is going to need a complete revamp at this point, from my perspective, to get anything going if we want to even win a couple more games on the season. So just ugly offense overall is what I take away from it.
Yeah, good recap there on the positives, negatives. Noah, do you have anything else to add to that, what Casey said and everything?
Yeah, I think Kavaris Thomas is probably literally the only positive. D'Angelo Malone, obviously, he had a pretty solid game on Saturday, but Kavaris Thomas and just see what he's able to come in and do at the end of the game is, I guess, has to be refreshing going forward because in the short, basically like a couple minutes, like 2 minutes and a quarter that he had, he produced 2 touchdown drives, and outside of, I think there were 4 3-and-outs, and then 2 more drives and then punts, and then, as Casey said, 3 lost fumbles. I mean, the drive chart for Western was pretty disgusting until KT came in and, did his thing. So I think that's at least that's my only positive going forward. Casey said there weren't a lot of penalties, but I think whenever guys on defense, you can't commit a penalty whenever Brandon Knox is already 7-8 yards downfield. And it's hard to hold whenever you don't really get your hands on a guy to begin with in terms of pass blocking. So, I hate to be the Debbie Downer, but I also, the numbers don't lie. So.
All right. Yeah. I mean, no reason to be a Debbie Downer, man. You're just telling the truth. I mean, it is what it is, and it was pretty ugly Saturday for Western Kentucky. And a question I'll ask you, I mean, you guys talked about Kavaris Thomas coming in, obviously leading those 2 touchdown drives. Now, here's the thing. Looked really good, but it's late in the 4th quarter. Did Marshall have a lot of their secondary, was their defense really trying at that point? They had the win sealed up. But here's the thing. I'm just going to ask you guys this question. Should it be the Kavaris Thomas leading the way and getting the start for the next game against UAB? And I'll start with you, Noah.
Yeah, Casey was talking about the offense needs some consistency to put it together, so maybe they can, bring in a couple more wins before season's end out there, because I think right now bowl game's out of the question. So I think now you're just trying to fight to stay relevant. And Tyrell Pigram has proved that I was an apologist for him, and I don't think I can be anymore, especially after this past weekend. And you go on the road this weekend to play UAB, who hasn't lost a home game in forever. And you still got to play BYU, and you still got to play FAU, and you still got to play Charlotte. Those are all been, 4 really solid teams. So why not just throw KT in there and see what he can do? It feels bad for Pigram because I believe he's in his last year of eligibility, and that he might end up riding the pine for it. But if Tyson Hill wants to do his best going forward for the offense, I see why not throw Thomas in there, because if he provides a spark, and what we saw in the 4th quarter this past weekend was not a fluke, then that might be able to jolt this team and give them some energy offensively and maybe bring back the consistency. Gage Walker can get more involved, help out the offensive line a little bit. So I think that it needs to be until further notice.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there. No, it's kind of a fine balance. You've only got one win this season. Do you want to go forward and see what Kavaris has for the future, or do you want to ride that wave of experience with Pigram? So I kind of agree with you in that regard. Go with KT and see what happens. Make sure that what he did on Saturday wasn't a fluke there late in the fourth quarter. I mean, you might have something there with him. Casey, I'll throw it over to you. Same question. Should it be the Kavaris Thomas show for Western Kentucky from here on out?
It's got to be the Kavaris Thomas show. I mean, just look at his potential and who he's built. Like, I think he's another Cam Newton, man. He's a big body. He can run. He can throw that deep ball. I love his potential. I mean, he's the highest rated recruit WKU has ever had at quarterback at 4 stars coming out of high school. So, some of these people have been asking, why wasn't he the starter from the start? And I got to ask the same thing, kind of. If he was rated that high and he looked, pretty good coming out of high school, maybe should have given him an earlier look. But, besides that fact, I think this year he definitely shows that he can throw a more consistent deep ball. That's something that I've seen Piggy T struggle with all year. The deep ball just hasn't been there. And, I mean, I think most of the plays and stats that Pigram has racked up has been because of his athletic ability. He's able to get out of the pocket and run. And, I mean, he's still our leading rusher right now. So that's kind of alarming. So, like Noah mentioned a little bit, got to get Gage Walker involved. I think KT being the starting quarterback, Tyson Helton can kind of get back to the things he was doing with Ty Story at quarterback last year as far as keeping him in the pocket, going downfield a little bit more, and then kind of just getting the outside, stretch games and pitch games to Gage Walker, open him some of those outside holes. Because right now I think with this read option game they've been running with Pigram, it's all just clustered in the middle. Everything is just a cluster, and there's too many guys running around different places. I think they just need to get back to the basics, throw downfield, hand it to Gage Walker, and let Kavaris Thomas show that arm strength off, because he's definitely got the most potential out of all the quarterbacks that we've seen so far this year. And I think he's definitely going to get it done. And, I mean, UAB doesn't have enough film to really look at him. So, I mean, you could catch him off guard and potentially put up some points this week. So I think he's definitely got to be the guy going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I know you compared him to Cam Newton. I might say pump the brakes on that a little bit, but I get what you're saying, though. I mean, he's a big body guy. He's got a strong arm, and you bring up a good point. He pretty much does everything Tyrell Pigram does, but he throws the ball deep, and I think that's something that Western Kentucky definitely needs. I mean, he's a guy that can run the ball too when he needs to. He's a big body guy, but he's got a big arm, and they need to throw the ball deep, and that's something that Piggy T wasn't really exactly doing. So, yeah, I agree. I think you got one win so far. Just go with KT and see what happens from here on out. I will ask you guys this. I don't think I put it on the pre-show prep, and I apologize, but I am going to ask you guys both, and I'll start with you, Casey. What's wrong with Western Kentucky's defense?
I mean, you're not getting a pass rush. Look at D'Angelo Malone's stats. I think at this point last year he had at least 5 sacks, and he's only got, 3.5 right now as it stands. So I think the inability to kind of handle teams over game planning for this defense. I think teams know who's going to be coming on the defense as far as D'Angelo Malone and Juwan Jones. Teams have done a good job of moving guys around and setting up those outside blocks to make sure those guys are locked down. And, I mean, just like Noah's mentioned before, the safeties haven't – those defensive backs and, the upperclassmen in the defensive backfield haven't gotten it done. Safeties missing tackles, missing their zones, not getting to their zones. So I think schematically this defense has just been thrown off because teams have game planned for them, and it's shown. So, I mean, you just got to look at the top. Juwan Jones and D'Angelo Malone have to get going. They got to start wreaking havoc. I think, I reflect back to a couple weeks ago. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. Clayton White was discussing what he was going to do as far as the defensive schemes right before the season. And he said he was going to move some guys around, let D'Angelo play, 1 technique, 2 technique on the inside. And I think they need to do more of that. I think they need to switch guys around on the defensive line, let them get at different positions, kind of throw some guys off, throw these offensives off that know what they're going to expect from this defense. And ultimately just rotate more guys into the defensive backfield, guys that want to make tackles, guys that aren't going to miss their zones, because I think there's too many mental mistakes and schematic mistakes going on in this defense above all, because we know there's 9 starters that came back from last year, and the talent and the ability is there. It's just schematics. They're just all messed up defensively, and they just need to focus on what they need to be doing as far as their job is each game.
Yeah, good point, Casey. Noah, you got anything to add to that in terms of Western Kentucky's defensive flaws so far this year?
Yeah, obviously the DBs are an issue, and I mean from the Louisville game on, I've pretty much made that a talking point every time we've been on here. But one thing so last year Kyle Bailey was really good, and he's been solid so far this year. But I think that's also in due part is because whoever was across from him in the 4-2-5, the actual Mike Becker was good and played well. Like Clay Davis had a really good season last year at the end of the year, and then I believe Jaden Hunter got a couple snaps in the UAB game and was solid. And so my thing is like, Eli Brown obviously is back from injury, and he's had he's been decent so far this year, but I don't understand why guys like Will Ignont haven't gotten plugged into the defense one. Like why is he not getting snaps? He got snaps at Tennessee. I don't understand why. That's one of my betches with some of the guys that transfer to Western from primarily look from the past couple of years from SEC schools like Jaden Hunter, Will Ignont, and then Ty Story. Like why those guys started at some of the best, like just in terms of talent wise, what programs can haul into the country can start and get snaps there. But they come here, and I know you have to earn it, and stars don't tell the whole story. But those guys are still dudes. They're players. Why do they not get to play? I think that they need to change it up at the Mike Becker spot. I'm trying to think of who's starting right now at Mike. Might be Damon Lowe. If I'm, I think I might be mistaken by that. But let Will Ignont get a couple snaps and maybe see, because they really struggled fitting the run here recently. And that's not something they had a problem with last year. So I think maybe trying something different at middle linebacker would maybe revitalize the defense. And I think the defenses or offenses are kind of scheming around to, like we talked about Malone's sack production, to get the ball out quicker so the Debo can't wreck the game. I think that's the reason why that his stat line is looking so poor so far this year, is because people know that he can single-handedly wreck a game, and they're doing a really good job because the back end's not holding up their end in the same way that the pass rush is. So it's almost a top-to-bottom issue, but there's more glaring issues in the secondary, and then as you work your way down towards the defensive line.
All right, good stuff, guys. Obviously, moving forward, kind of getting past the Marshall game, you head into a road game at UAB. The schedule doesn't get much, any easier. So just looking at UAB from top to bottom, what do you see from UAB in terms of key players and, good and bad matchups for Western Kentucky heading into this game? And Noah, I'll start with you if you're not choking on your chicken salad there.
I'm not. I just finished it up right there. I think so. Marshall is almost like a borderline carbon copy of what they're going to see on Saturday. Spencer Brown, Brendan Knox is the best running back in Conference USA. Spencer Brown is like 1B. So you're going to see the same thing, another physical offensive line. You're going to see better weapons on the outside. Austin Watkins Jr. is a legitimate NFL prospect. So once again, Western's secondary is going to be tested by another perimeter weapon on the outside, and we'll see it. And I believe they have another guy, Mitchell, who's also another NFL prospect. So they have two NFL prospects, a wide receiver, and an NFL-level running back in their backfield. I don't know if Tyler Johnson's going to be – honestly, if Tyler Johnson is back at quarterback for UAB Saturday, that gives Western a chance, because people have compared him to the Jameis Winston of college football. He turns the ball over a lot, despite having all the weapons that he has. So Western's going to have to really tighten down in terms of playing when they play man-to-man coverage against these big-body receivers who are really lengthy and win at the catch point. And then they're going to have to stop UAB on early downs, because Spencer Brown is a really physical back, just in the same way that Brendan Knox is. So basically expect much of the same offensively from UAB that what Marshall showed this past Saturday.
Yeah, good points. You mentioned Myron Mitchell and Watkins. Both of those guys have over 300 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns apiece. Spencer Brown, I think he has about 450 rushing yards for UAB so far. So obviously they can get it done on offense. That's for sure. Casey, kind of the same question for you. What do you kind of see overall in UAB, some of their key players? What are some matchups you're kind of looking at as Western Kentucky goes into that game?
I think it's a very accurate comparison for both of you all to say that this is a team very similar to Marshall. You all mentioned Brown, Mitchell, and Watkins Jr. had all their stats written down. Those are 3 guys that are going to be very tough for us to defend. UAB is favored by 13.5 in this game. So I expect them to not do anything too crazy, because they think they're going to fully expect to win this game. I think they're just going to do their thing offensively, which means we got to come up with turnovers. The Hilltoppers haven't came up with too many turnovers on the season, and that's got to change in this game. They got to have some game-changing defensive plays. Malone's got to get, a sack, a strip sack. Juwan Jones could throw that in there too. That defensive line's really got to get pressure on the quarterback so those receivers can't get the ball. Plug the run holes. The linebacking core is going to be key, like Noah discussed. It's really going to be big in this game for us to get off to a good start because we saw, Marshall 28-0 at half. You're done. I mean, you're basically done for the game when you're down 28-0 at half. So you can't get down early like that. And what I really think the Hilltoppers need to do offensively in this game to combat UAB's defense is I think they just need to make Gage Walker the workhorse again. Give him 20 carries and see what happens. If he doesn't have a good game, so be it. Keep running the other backs and giving them chances. But why not get Gage Walker some carries again? I think they should run a more pro-style offense. Keep Kavaris Thomas in the pocket, have him go downfield, run some go routes, run some post routes, see if you can beat him deep. I mean, what have you got to lose at this point? Open up the offense, stick to your bread and butter, get Gage Walker involved. And this line, I mean, they just got to start doing a better job overall of opening up holes. That's where the run game's going to come in. So if this offensive line can play up to the potential we know they had going into this season, the run game's going to open up, and so are those deep balls, get the play action going from the run game. So I'm really expecting WKU to change this offense up and kind of just get back to the basics as far as putting up points so they can stay in this game from the jump and not get down early.
Yeah, good stuff, Casey. Good stuff. You mentioned UAB. I should have mentioned this before we started talking about it, but they're 3-1 on the season. Their lone loss is to Miami on that Thursday night game. They're 1-0 in Conference USA. They haven't played, though. Obviously, they had Rice on the schedule last weekend. Rice is not playing this year, so they haven't played in a couple weeks. So it kind of goes into what we were talking about last week with Marshall. Maybe there's some rust, but Marshall didn't.
We also said last week Marshall hadn't played in a month, and they were going to be rusty. And that clearly was not the case. So that is not a take or a potential thing to watch out for. That is, so we're taking that off the table right now.
Hey, every team's different, Noah. Okay, just because Marshall came out well rested.
Marshall and UAB are carbon copies of each other.
I'm just saying, hey, I'm throwing out, just anything that Western Kentucky fans can grasp onto for hope right now. So, but UAB, obviously UAB is like one of the conference favorites to win the championship. So, I mean, it doesn't get any easier for Western Kentucky going forward. This is a tough stretch for them. But so with that being said, you guys have talked about UAB, what you kind of expect. I am curious as we move on to predictions. We'll start there, and we'll start with Casey.
All right, so this is the first week I have changed my tradition of picking the tops every week. I've picked the tops to win every single week this season, and I came pretty close in the MTSU game with that score. I picked 24-19 tops, and they got the win 20-17, but all other predictions have been very far off. So I'm going to get a little more realistic this week, and I'm going to say UAB 35, WKU 27. I really do think Helton's going to make some adjustments offensively this week, and we put some points up in the first half. But overall, I just don't think WKU has what it takes to compete with this UAB team. They're too much, like you mentioned, Sean. They're a conference favorite. They got all the high power on offense they need to do what Marshall did against WKU last week. So ultimately, I think WKU keeps this one a little closer. But in the end, UAB is just too good, and they're going to outscore them 35-27.
All right. I mean, obviously, I thought you would go, well, surprisingly, you went with the opponent win there. So, obviously, coaches weren't paying you anything this week. So, maybe get back on the right track, winning-wise.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it is surprising you did say 27, so you're expecting, like you said, Western to kind of make a jump offensively, which would be a good thing to see in a lot of fans' opinions. So, Noah, what's your prediction on this game?
I'm going to go 42-17 UAB. That's it. Honestly, I wish that I could just say UAB big and you actually put that in the staff predictions. That's my UAB big. I'm sorry, I'm just honest.
I can put it in parentheses if that helps.
It'll be interesting to see if KT can get this offense going Saturday, but right now, UAB big. That's my prediction.
So I will ask you this, just to throw in a little extra here at the end. Going forward, I mean, what do you see the rest of this schedule? What do you I know I'm kind of putting you guys on the spot, but what do you see Western Kentucky? I mean, how many more wins do you see on this schedule for Western Kentucky going forward? And Noah, I'll start with you.
I was going to say I'll start because I actually looked at this on Sunday morning. I've got 2-8 UT Chattanooga. And that's not even, as we've learned in the past, the FCS team, that's not even a gimme at this point. we've got 2-8/2-9, which they're playing 10 or 11 games. I always forget. But UAB, I think, lose to UAB, lose to FAU, lose to BYU. That way, I mean, you're already 1-6 right there. Charlotte looks really good. Lose to Charlotte. Southern Miss and UT Chattanooga are the only two that look like feasible in terms of wins. And so I would say that they beat UT Chattanooga and lose to Southern Miss. So.
All right, doom and gloom, Noah. I like it.
I'm not on the payroll like Casey is, or payroll. I'm just here to be honest. Like that's, I'm not necessarily an optimist. I like to tell it how I see it, and that's, I believe last time we talked about this, I said 6-4 or something like that, 7-3. So, you got to take it whenever, I just got to be honest with myself.
It's before we saw the real WKU. By the way, somebody just scrolled across your screen back there. I'm not sure who that was. You want to give him a shout out and a special guest appearance?
That is my friend Hunter, who is allowing me to crash with them as I've been homeless the last couple of weeks. So.
Thanks, Hunter, for accommodating Noah so he can give us his hot takes on our weekly Zoom chat. All right, Casey. Yeah, I'll ask you the same thing. Just moving forward the rest of the way, looking at the rest of the schedule. How many more wins do you see Western grabbing here?
It pains me to say this, but I'm going to go with Noah. I mean, it's like 3-8, whatever it is, 10, 11 games, 3 wins at this point. It's really disappointing too, because the last time we had this conversation, I was really high on the tops. I said I was like 7 or 8 wins. So I really thought Tyson Helton was going to make some early adjustments and get the team going immediately, and that still hasn't happened yet. So, like Noah said, UT Chattanooga, I think that's a win. And then I think Tyson Helton's going to pull something out and come up with some win here or there. I don't know who that may be against. I think we could have a sneak win against Charlotte the last week of the season just for the heck of it. I think that might be a win possibly. Charlotte is pretty good, though, they've shown. So I don't know where that other win could come from. But 3-4 at the most, 4 at the very most this season. But, yeah, 3-8 seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you. Just from what you see and what you're seeing so far from Western, the defense isn't solid. The offense is erratic. Yeah, I mean, you just don't see a lot more wins unless they start turning things around. So I agree with all of you on that. And, yeah, well, that about do it for our Zoomcast, man. Start drinking, guys. Right. Well, everybody listens to this podcast, and I should put this disclaimer before we started. So you just start pouring whiskey before they listen to us. It's be very good. But yeah, I agree. We'll keep it moving forward, but we'll continue with the coverage at InsideHilltopperSports.com because that's what we do, win or lose.
Doom and gloom probably for the rest of the season, but that's just where it looks like it's headed.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate too, because I think a lot of people were really high on this team coming into the season and felt like that they were gonna, they could be the ones that win the division and potentially go win the conference, and had a really great season. And I think early on, after the Liberty game, there was some reason for optimism, and then it just completely went off the rails.
I think that's the beauty of college football. I mean, you've got everybody coming back from a 9-win team, most everybody coming back from a 9-win team. Obviously, you've got, changes in key positions, but you got enough pieces back from a 9-win team. You expect a lot of good things, and it just hasn't happened so far. So it just goes to show you that a few changes can really jack up the chemistry of a football team. So, yeah, that's the beauty of college football, though, so that's why we enjoy covering it. So, Noah, got anything else to add to the Zoomcast before we leave? You want to plug anything going forward, whether it's with our site or with another project of yours?
Film breakdown should be coming soon this week. It'll pretty much, like, I can almost just like change the names, and on my one from last week, it would almost be the exact same. So I expect to hear about a lot of good things in what UAB does schematically. It'll be pretty interesting. They do a lot of the same stuff they did last year, but obviously, the Tops were able to force some turnovers last year, so I think that's going to be really key, as Casey mentioned, going into this game Saturday. And that's pretty much their only puncher's chance of pulling off this upset, because I believe the stat is UAB hasn't lost a game at Legion Field in 3 to 4 years. Like during the show, they started their win streak even like it was still going even when the program got shut down or something like that. So they do not lose at Legion Field.
And you can catch Noah personally on Twitter at Noah MCGH Sports.
Boom
Yeah.
goes the dynamite.
Bam.
Yeah.
All right, hey, Casey. Anything else on your end to add? Just anything else to plug, whether it's from our side or anything else you're working on right now.
Yeah, for sure. I got the Pro Hilltopper update. Guys that are in the pros right now that used to play for WKU just came out today. You can expect that to be out. If it hasn't been published yet, it should be out by the end of the day, I would think. Other than that, keep what he's shaking his head. We'll see about that. We'll see about that. But anyways, yeah, I got that coming out. I'll have a nice little player feature at the end of the week on Big D tackle Jeremy Darvin. He's had some good Zoom conferences with the media. He's always a very outspoken one, so expect a good player feature from him by the end of the week. And then got to shout out our man, Tyler Mansfield, always doing the good stuff with the Beat Writer Q&A. I think that just came out today as well. So look for Tyler Mansfield's stuff. But you can find me on Twitter at @TheCaseyWarner, CaseyWarner. All my stuff will be on there. Shout out to Tyler Mansfield. Shout out to Noah McGhee. Shout out to Sean Williams for always doing the great stuff on Inside Hilltopper Sports. We do this.
That's a good plug, and I will myself give a shout out to Tyler Mansfield. And if you want to catch him on Twitter, it's @bymansfield. He is he's getting his future lined up to graduate today, so he is missing out on the Zoomcast. So hopefully he'll be back with us next week. So I really appreciate Noah, Casey, appreciate you guys hopping on and giving your takes on the game, the bad game, and maybe another bad game coming up. So I appreciate your insight and everything you guys do on the site. This is InsideHilltoppersports.com, Zoom chat. We are out.